Emma Rodriguez sat curled up in the corner of the child-friendly interview room at the Miami-Dade Police Department, her tiny fingers wrapped tightly around a worn stuffed bunny named Coco. The bunny had once been Snow White, but 3 years of constant companionship had turned it a soft gray, with one ear slightly chewed and a small tear on its belly that her grandmother Rosa had carefully stitched with pink thread. Emma's dark curls fell across her face like a protective curtain, hiding the haunted look that had replaced her once bright smile. Detective Maria Santos had seen her share of traumatized witnesses over her 15-year career, but nothing had prepared her for the heartbreak of watching a 3-year-old battle demons that no child should ever face. Emma hadn't spoken a single word since that horrific Tuesday night 3 weeks ago, when her world shattered into a million pieces at Martinez Family Market. The small corner store had been Emma's second home. Every Tuesday and Thursday, her mother worked double shifts at the hospital. Emma would spend the afternoon with her grandfather, Abuelo Miguel. The 72-year-old man with kind eyes and weathered hands would lift her up to help him stock shelves, letting her place the colorful cereal boxes just so. He'd sneak her pieces of candy when her grandmother wasn't looking and tell her stories about brave princesses who saved kingdoms with their courage and kindness. That Tuesday had started like any other. Emma had helped Abuelo Miguel arrange the magazines, carefully placing the ones with pretty covers at eye level. She'd been reaching for a chocolate bar on the high shelf. Abuelo Miguel always kept her favorites up there, claiming it was their secret treasure, when the front door chimed. But this time, it wasn't the gentle ding-dong that usually announced friendly neighbors or regular customers. This time, the sound was harsh, violent, as the glass door slammed against the wall with such force that the little bell broke free and clattered to the floor. 2 figures in black ski masks burst through the entrance, their boots thundering across the worn linoleum. Emma remembered the sound most of all. Heavy, angry footsteps that seemed to shake the entire building. The taller man wielded a silver gun that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, while his companion carried something long and dark that Emma's young mind couldn't quite identify as a shotgun. "Nobody move!" the taller one had screamed, his voice rough and terrifying. "Empty the register, old man, or things get messy." Emma had frozen behind the counter, her small hand still stretched toward the candy shelf. Time seemed to slow as she watched her beloved Abuelo Miguel's face transform from gentle confusion to protective fear, not for himself, but for her. In that split second, as chaos erupted around them, Miguel's eyes found hers across the small store, and without speaking, they communicated everything they needed to say. "Hide Mia, stay safe." The next few minutes remained a blur in Emma's traumatized memory. She remembered loud voices, angry shouting, and the horrible sound of something heavy hitting flesh. She remembered Abuelo Miguel's pained cry, the crash of falling merchandise, and the terrifying boom that made her ears ring for hours afterward. But most of all, she remembered the fear, a bone-deep terror that seemed to freeze her very soul. When the police and paramedics arrived 20 minutes later, they found Emma exactly where she'd been hiding, crouched behind a stack of rice bags, clutching Coco and staring at nothing. Abuelo Miguel lay unconscious near the register, blood pooling beneath his gray hair, fighting for every breath. The cash register was empty, its drawer hanging open like a mechanical mouth frozen in a silent scream. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the pediatric trauma specialist, had been working with Emma for 3 weeks now. She'd tried every technique in her considerable arsenal: play therapy with dolls and action figures, art therapy with crayons and finger paints, even music therapy with gentle lullabies and children's songs. Nothing seemed to reach the little girl trapped inside her own mind. She's exhibiting classic signs of selective mutism following severe trauma, Dr. Walsh had explained to Emma's parents during their last consultation. Her brain is protecting her by shutting down the verbal pathways associated with that traumatic memory. Until she feels truly safe, she may not be able to access those memories or the words to describe them. Emma's mother, Carmen, worked as a nurse at Jackson Memorial Hospital and understood trauma from a medical perspective. But understanding it and living with it were two entirely different things. Every morning, she'd wake up hoping to hear her daughter's sweet voice calling, "Mommy," from the next room. Instead, she'd find Emma sitting silently by the window, stroking Coco and staring out at the world with those two old eyes. The family had tried everything. Rosa, Emma's grandmother, sang the traditional lullabies that had once made Emma giggle and dance. Carmen brought home picture books and read them aloud, hoping familiar stories might spark some response. Even Emma's father, Roberto, had taken time off from his construction job to build an elaborate dollhouse, thinking that playing with miniature families might help Emma process her experience. But Emma remained locked in her silent world. The case was growing cold. The two suspects had been apprehended within 48 hours of the robbery, the Morrison brothers, Jake and Tommy, both with extensive criminal records and a habit of targeting small family businesses. Their fingerprints were all over the store, their faces partially visible on the grainy security footage, and they'd been caught with the stolen cash. It should have been an open and shut case. But their expensive defense attorney, Harold Blackwood, was fighting the charges with every legal trick in the book. He argued that the security footage was too unclear for positive identification, that the fingerprints could have been left during previous visits to the store, and that the brothers had simply found the money and were too afraid to report it. Most importantly, he claimed that without witness testimony, the prosecution couldn't prove his clients had committed violent assault. Emma was the only person who could put the Morrison brothers definitively at the scene during the commission of the crime. She was the only one who could testify that they were the ones who had brutally attacked her grandfather. Without her voice, without her story, the men who had destroyed her family might walk free. District Attorney Rebecca Martinez had built her career on protecting the innocent and ensuring justice for victims of violent crime. She'd prosecuted murderers, rapists, and armed robbers, but she'd never faced a case quite like this one. How do you ask a traumatized 3-year-old to relive the worst moment of her life? How do you convince a jury to trust the testimony of a child who can barely speak? The pressure was mounting from all sides. The media had picked up the story, dubbing it the silent witness case. Community leaders demanded justice for Miguel Martinez, a beloved neighborhood figure who'd run the family store for 30 years. The mayor's office was calling daily for updates. And through it all, Emma sat in silence, holding Coco and carrying the weight of everyone's hopes on her tiny shoulders. Time was running out. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for Monday morning, just 4 days away. If the prosecution couldn't present compelling evidence, Judge Patricia Williams would be forced to consider the defense's motion to dismiss the most serious charges. The Morrison brothers would likely face only minor theft charges and be back on the streets within months. As Detective Santos watched Emma rock gently in her chair, humming a wordless tune that seemed to come from some deep, protected place, inside her heart, she made a decision that would change everything. Sometimes, conventional methods weren't enough. Sometimes you needed to think outside the box to try something that had never been done before. Sometimes you needed a miracle. And Detective Santos had an idea for exactly where to find one. District Attorney Rebecca Martinez hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her office on the 14th floor of the Miami-Dade Government Center looked like a war zone, legal briefs scattered across every surface, empty coffee cups forming small towers on her desk, and case files stacked so high they threatened to topple at any moment. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her exhausted face, as she stared at the photograph pinned to her bulletin board. 3-year-old Emma Rodriguez, taken before the robbery, laughing as she helped her grandfather. Stock shelves. Rebecca had built her reputation on impossible cases. Over her 12-year career as a prosecutor, she'd secured convictions against drug kingpins who seemed untouchable, domestic abusers who terrorized their victims into silence, and corporate criminals who thought their money could buy immunity. She'd never lost a case that mattered, until now. The Morrison brothers were going to walk free, and there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it. Her phone buzzed with another call from Mayor Patricia Hernandez's office. Rebecca let it go to voicemail, knowing it would be the same message. As the previous 5 calls, the community was demanding justice. The media was asking tough questions, and political pressure was mounting. The mayor was up for re-election in 8 months, and a high-profile failure in the prosecutor's office wouldn't look good on her campaign advertisements. Knock, knock. The voice belonged to Detective Maria Santos, who appeared in the doorway, holding 2 steaming cups of Café Cubano from the little shop downstairs. Thought you could use some real coffee instead of that office swill. Rebecca accepted the cup gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma of authentic Cuban coffee. Any word? From Dr. Walsh? Same as yesterday. Emma's showing some improvement. She's eating a little more, sleeping better, but still no words. The trauma runs deep, Rebecca. That little girl saw things no child should ever see. Without her testimony, we've got nothing that'll stick. Rebecca pulled out a thick manila folder and spread its contents across her desk. Look at this. The security footage is so grainy, you can barely tell the suspects are human, let alone identify specific individuals. The fingerprint evidence only proves they were in the store at some point, not that they committed assault. And Harold Blackwood is already arguing that his clients were regular customers who visited the store multiple times. Detective Santos sat down heavily in the chair across from Rebecca's desk. At 43, Maria had seen enough violence. Tragedy to last several lifetimes, but something about Emma's case had gotten under her skin. Maybe it was because her own granddaughter was the same age, or maybe it was the way Emma's silence seemed to echo the helplessness they all felt. There's got to be something we're missing, Maria said, flipping through crime scene photos. Some piece of evidence, some witness we haven't found yet. We've canvassed the entire neighborhood 3 times. Nobody saw anything useful. The couple in the apartment above the laundromat heard the shots but didn't look outside. The teenagers hanging around the corner ran when they heard sirens. Even Mrs. Patterson, who sees everything from her window, was at her sister's house that night. Rebecca stood and walked to her window, looking out at the bustling city below. Miami stretched endlessly in all directions, millions of people living their lives, most of them blissfully unaware that 2 violent criminals might soon walk free because a traumatized child couldn't speak. I keep thinking about what Dr. Walsh said, Rebecca continued, her breath fogging the glass. Emma's brain is protecting her by shutting down verbal communication. But what if we could find a way around that protection? What if we could create an environment where she feels safe enough to remember? What are you thinking? Rebecca turned back to face Maria, and for the first time in weeks, there was a spark of hope in her eyes. You know how Dr. Walsh mentioned that Emma has been responding well to animal therapy? How she seems more relaxed when she's around her neighbor's cat. Yeah, Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned that Emma actually smiled when Whiskers jumped on her lap last week. First time since the incident. What if we took that concept and applied it to the courtroom? Maria raised an eyebrow. You want to bring a cat into Judge Williams' courtroom? Not a cat. Something bigger. Something trained. Something that could provide Emma with the emotional support she needs to access those buried memories. Rebecca was pacing now, her legal mind working at full speed, There's precedent for therapy animals in courtrooms. California used a golden retriever named Rosie to help child witnesses in abuse cases. New York has a program that pairs PTSD victims with trained comfort dogs during testimony. But Emma's only 3 years old. Has anyone ever tried this with someone so young? That's exactly why it might work. Rebecca pulled out her laptop and began typing furiously. Adults have rational filters that might interfere with the therapeutic process. They analyze and overthink. But children, especially very young children, respond to animals on a purely emotional level. If we could find the right animal, with the right training and the right temperament, Harold Blackwood will fight it tooth and nail. He'll claim it's prejudicial, that it's designed to manipulate the jury's emotions rather than elicit truthful testimony. Let him try. I've been researching the legal precedents all night. The therapeutic use of animals in legal proceedings is well established, particularly in cases involving traumatized witnesses. As long as we can demonstrate that the animal serves a legitimate therapeutic purpose and doesn't interfere with the witness's ability to provide accurate testimony, Judge Williams should allow it. Rebecca pulled out a yellow legal pad and began making notes. We'll need an animal with specific qualifications, professionally trained, calm temperament, experience working with children, preferably with some background in trauma recovery. We'll need expert testimony from Dr. Walsh about the therapeutic benefits. And we'll need to file motions immediately to get approval before the preliminary hearing. Assuming Judge Williams approves this, where are we going to find this miracle animal? And what makes you think it'll be able to reach Emma when human professionals haven't been able to? Because sometimes the most powerful connections happen when we least expect them. Rebecca's voice was stronger now, filled with the determination that had made her one of Miami's most successful prosecutors. Emma's been surrounded by adults trying to help her. Doctors, therapists, social workers, family members. All of them are invested in getting her to remember, to speak, to provide testimony. That pressure, even when it comes from love, might be part of what's keeping her locked inside herself. But an animal doesn't have an agenda. A therapy animal doesn't need her to remember or speak or testify. It just needs her to be herself in that moment without expectations or pressure. Maria was nodding slowly. It's crazy enough that it might actually work. Dr. Walsh mentioned that Emma whispered something to her grandmother the night after the robbery. Just one word, doggy. Mrs. Rodriguez thought it was random, maybe Emma remembering her neighbor's pet. But what if it wasn't random? What if Emma was trying to tell us something? Rebecca was fully energized now, her exhaustion forgotten in the rush of possibility. I'm going to call every animal therapy organization in South Florida. Police canine units, hospital therapy programs, PTSD treatment centers. Someone out there has the perfect partner for Emma. And if this doesn't work? Rebecca looked back at Emma's photograph, at that innocent smile that had been replaced by haunted silence. Then we'll have tried everything. But I have a feeling about this, Maria. Sometimes the most unconventional solutions lead to the most extraordinary results. As Maria left to begin her own research into animal therapy programs, Rebecca returned to her phone. The first call was to Dr. Walsh to discuss the psychological framework for using a therapy animal in Emma's case. The second was to Judge Williams' clerk to schedule an emergency hearing to request permission for the unprecedented approach. The third call was the most important of all, to the Miami-Dade Police Department's K-9 unit. If Rebecca was right about this, they were about to make legal history. And somewhere out there was the animal that could give Emma Rodriguez her voice back. Time was running out, but for the first time in weeks, Rebecca Martinez believed they had a chance. Officer Michael Caine had always believed that some partnerships were written in the stars. When he first laid eyes on Zeus 5 years ago at the Miami-Dade Canine Training Academy. The 18-month-old German Shepherd was cowering in the corner of his kennel, traumatized from his previous life as a failed guard dog. The breeder had deemed him too soft for protection work, claiming the young shepherd cared more about comforting people than intimidating them. What others saw as weakness, Michael recognized as Zeus's greatest strength. Now, as Michael sat in the conference room at the Miami-Dade Government Center, watching District Attorney Rebecca Martinez pace frantically while explaining her unprecedented request, he found himself studying Zeus's reaction. The magnificent dog lay calmly at Michael's feet, but his intelligent amber eyes tracked every movement in the room. At 95 pounds of solid muscle, Zeus commanded respect wherever he went, yet children instinctively gravitated toward him, as if sensing the gentle soul beneath his imposing exterior. "I'll be honest with you, Officer Kane," Rebecca was saying, her voice tight with exhaustion and desperation. "This has never been attempted with a witness this young. We're in uncharted territory, both legally and therapeutically. Judge Williams granted us permission for the emergency hearing, but she made it clear that if there's even a hint that the animal is coaching the witness or influencing her testimony, she'll shut it down immediately." Michael nodded, absently, running his fingers through Zeus's thick coat. "What exactly do you need from us?" Detective Maria Santos leaned forward from across the table. "We need Zeus to be present during Emma's testimony, to provide emotional support without interfering with the legal process. Dr. Walsh believes that having a calm, trained animal nearby might help Emma access memories that trauma has locked away. The thing is," Rebecca continued, stopping her pacing to look directly at Michael, "this isn't just about having any therapy dog in the courtroom. We specifically need Zeus because of his training and temperament. I've reviewed the files of every certified therapy animal in South Florida, and Zeus has the most extensive experience working with trauma victims, especially children." Michael's mind drifted back to some of those cases. There was 8-year-old Marcus, who hadn't spoken after witnessing his mother's overdose until Zeus curled up beside him during a police interview. Or 12-year-old Sophia, who'd been too terrified to testify against her abuser, until Zeus's steady presence gave her the courage to speak her truth. Each time, Michael had watched in amazement as his partner somehow reached places that human compassion couldn't touch. "Zeus has worked with the Children's Crisis Center for 3 years," Michael explained. "He's trained in what we call passive comfort therapy, providing emotional support without active interaction. He doesn't seek attention or affection from the victim. He simply makes himself available as a calming presence." Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who had joined them via video conference from her office, nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what Emma needs. She's been overwhelmed by well-meaning adults trying to help her process her trauma. A non-demanding presence might be the key to helping her feel safe enough to remember. But here's what worries me," Michael continued, his protective instincts kicking in. "Emma's only 3 years old. She's been through unimaginable trauma. If this backfires, if being in that courtroom somehow makes things worse for her, I'll never forgive myself. And neither will Zeus." As if sensing the weight of the conversation, Zeus lifted his massive head and looked directly at Michael. Those amber eyes seemed to communicate understanding, acceptance, and readiness for whatever challenge lay ahead. It was the same look Zeus had given him before every difficult case, a look that said, "I trust you, partner. Let's go help someone." Rebecca sat down across from Michael, her expression softening. "I have a 3-year-old niece, Officer Kane. I understand your concerns. But right now, Emma's trapped in a silence that's protecting the very people who destroyed her family. The Morrison brothers are going to walk free unless we can help her find her voice. And based on everything I've read about Zeus's work with traumatized children, he might be her only hope." Michael's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from his wife Sarah, who worked as a pediatric nurse. Whatever they're asking you to do, if it helps a child, say yes. Zeus was born for this kind of work. Tell me about Emma, Michael said finally. What specifically happened to her? Zeus needs to understand who he's trying to help. Detective Santos pulled out the case file. 3 weeks ago, Emma was at her grandfather's store when 2 armed men burst in. They pistol-whipped 72-year-old Miguel Martinez and shot him when he tried to protect Emma. She watched it all happen from behind the counter. Her grandfather's still in intensive care, and Emma hasn't spoken a single word since that night. Michael felt Zeus's body tense slightly beside him. The dog had an uncanny ability to sense the emotional weight of situations, and hearing about Emma's trauma seemed to affect him deeply. The preliminary hearing is Monday morning, Rebecca continued. If Emma can't testify, the charges will likely be reduced to simple theft. The men who nearly killed her grandfather will serve maybe 18 months and be back on the streets. What's the courtroom setup going to be like? Michael asked, his tactical mind already working through logistics. Zeus needs to be positioned where Emma can see him easily, but where his presence won't distract the jury or appear to be influencing her testimony. Dr. Walsh's voice crackled through the video conference speaker. I've been working with Emma for 3 weeks, and she's shown the most positive response to animals. Her grandmother mentioned that Emma whispered one word the night after the trauma. Doggy. I believe she was trying to tell us something important. Zeus has worked in courtrooms before, Michael explained. He knows how to remain completely still during testimony, how to provide comfort without drawing attention to himself. But I need to meet Emma first, to see if there's a connection. Not every child responds to every animal, even trained therapy dogs. That can be arranged, Detective Santos said immediately. We could bring Emma to the station tomorrow morning for a brief introduction. Nothing formal, nothing pressured. Just see how she reacts to Zeus. Rebecca leaned back in her chair, looking more hopeful than she had in weeks. If Emma connects with Zeus, if having him there gives her the courage to speak, we might actually have a chance at justice. Michael looked down at Zeus, who had risen to sit at attention beside his chair. The dog's ears were forward, alert, and ready, as if he already understood the importance of the mission ahead. Over 5 years of partnership, Michael had learned to trust Zeus's instincts about people, especially vulnerable people who needed help. All right, Michael said finally. We'll do it. But I have conditions. First, if at any point Zeus senses that Emma is becoming more distressed rather than less, we remove him immediately. Second, I need to be present in the courtroom to monitor both Emma and Zeus throughout the testimony. And third, if this goes badly, if it traumatizes Emma further or compromises the case, the responsibility is mine, not the department's. Agreed, Rebecca said immediately. Michael, you and Zeus might be about to save not just this case, but a little girl's life. Emma's been carrying this burden alone for 3 weeks. Maybe it's time she had a friend to help her carry it. As the meeting broke up, and everyone began making preparations for the next day's introduction, Michael knelt beside Zeus and looked into those intelligent amber eyes. What do you think, partner? Ready to help another kid find her voice? Zeus's tail wagged once, a subtle but unmistakable sign of readiness. In that moment, Michael knew that whatever happened in that courtroom Monday morning, they would face it together. Emma Rodriguez was about to discover that sometimes the most powerful allies come with 4 legs and a heart full of unconditional love. Monday morning arrived with the weight of destiny pressing down on everyone involved in the case. The Miami-Dade County Courthouse buzzed with an energy that veteran court reporter Margaret Henley hadn't felt in her 27 years on the Yars job. News vans lined the street outside, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like mechanical flowers seeking sunlight. Reporters jostled for position, on the courthouse steps, their camera crews capturing every person who entered the imposing limestone building. Inside Courtroom 6B, Judge Patricia Williams surveyed the packed gallery with a mixture of concern and determination. At 62, she had presided over thousands of cases, from petty theft to capital murder, but she'd never allowed a police dog to serve as a comfort animal for a witness. The legal precedent was thin, the potential for appeal was enormous, and the media scrutiny was unlike anything she'd experienced. Yet something about this case, about 3-year-old Emma Rodriguez and her desperate need for justice, had convinced her to take the unprecedented step. The gallery was standing room only. Emma's extended family filled the first 3 rows on the prosecution side, their faces a mixture of hope and anxiety. Rosa Rodriguez, Emma's grandmother, clutched a rosary in her weathered hands, whispering prayers in rapid Spanish. Carmen Rodriguez sat rigidly beside her mother, her nurse's training helping her maintain composure while her heart shattered with every passing moment. Roberto Rodriguez had taken another day off work, his construction-calloused hands fidgeting with the tie his wife had insisted he wear. On the defense side, the Morrison family presented a stark contrast. Jake and Tommy Morrison's mother, Linda, sat alone in the second row, her bleached blonde hair perfectly styled, and her designer purse clutched defensively across her chest. She'd hired Harold Blackwood, one of Miami's most expensive criminal defense attorneys, liquidating her late husband's life insurance policy to pay his retainer. To Linda Morrison, her boys were victims of circumstance, good kids who'd made bad choices after falling in with the wrong crowd. Harold Blackwood himself cut an imposing figure at the defense table. At 58, he was lean and sharp-featured, with silver hair and an expensive suit that probably cost more than Miguel Martinez made in a month at his small market. Blackwood had built his career on creating reasonable doubt, on finding the tiny cracks in the prosecution's case and driving wedges through them until the entire structure collapsed. He'd already filed 17 motions challenging various aspects of the prosecution's case, and he wasn't finished yet. "Your Honor," Blackwood had argued during the preliminary motion hearing, allowing a police dog in the courtroom during a child's testimony is nothing more than emotional manipulation designed to prejudice the jury against my clients. This animal serves no legitimate legal purpose and will undoubtedly influence both the witness and the jury in ways that compromise my client's right to a fair trial. Rebecca Martinez had been ready for this argument. She'd spent the weekend preparing a comprehensive legal brief citing every relevant case law she could find. Your Honor, the therapeutic use of trained animals to assist traumatized witnesses is well established in multiple jurisdictions. The dog's presence serves a legitimate medical purpose, helping the witness access memories that trauma has made difficult to retrieve. This is no different from allowing a witness to use any other medical aid that helps them provide accurate testimony. Judge Williams had ultimately ruled in favor of allowing Zeus, but with strict conditions. The dog would remain at Officer Kane's side throughout the proceedings. He would not interact with Emma unless she initiated contact. And if there was any indication that the animal was influencing the testimony rather than simply providing comfort, he would be immediately removed. Now, as the clock approached 9 a.m., the tension in the courtroom was palpable. The jury had been selected the previous week, 8 women and 4 men, ranging in age from 26 to 68. They'd all been questioned extensively about their feelings toward police dogs, therapy animals, and child witnesses. 3 potential jurors had been dismissed when they admitted they might be swayed by the presence of the dog rather than focusing solely on the evidence. At the prosecution table, Rebecca Martinez reviewed her notes one final time. She'd restructured her entire opening strategy around Emma's testimony, knowing that everything depended on whether the traumatized child could find her voice. Beside her, Detective Santos checked her own files, ready to provide any supporting evidence that Emma's testimony might reveal. The courtroom doors opened, and a collective hush fell over the gallery. Officer Michael Caine entered first, his dress uniform crisp and professional. Behind him walked Zeus, a magnificent German shepherd, moving with calm dignity despite the unusual setting. The dog's amber eyes swept the room once, taking in the crowd, the elevated judge's bench, and the formal atmosphere, but his expression remained serene and focused. Zeus had spent the weekend preparing for this moment. Michael had brought him to the courthouse twice over the weekend, allowing him to familiarize himself with the sounds, smells, and layout of the courtroom. They'd practiced the heel command that would keep Zeus positioned beside the witness stand, and they'd rehearsed the stay command that would keep him motionless even if the testimony became emotional or dramatic. The media erupted as Zeus entered. Camera flashes flickered like lightning, despite the judge's strict orders about photography. Court security moved quickly to confiscate several phones that were attempting to record video. Judge Williams banged her gavel sharply, restoring order with the authority of someone who'd spent decades managing unruly courtrooms. "Ladies and gentlemen," Judge Williams announced in her clear, no-nonsense voice, "I will remind everyone that this is a court of law, not a circus. Any disruption, any unauthorized photography or recording, any behavior that interferes with these proceedings will result in immediate removal and potential contempt charges." Zeus seemed completely unbothered by the commotion. He settled into a perfect sitting position beside Officer Caine's chair, his attention focused and alert but calm. Several jury members leaned forward slightly, clearly intrigued by the unusual presence but trying to maintain their professional demeanor. The defense table was a study in controlled fury. Jake Morrison, 24 years old with numerous tattoos covering his arms and neck, whispered angrily to his attorney. His younger brother Tommy, 22 and equally decorated with ink, slouched in his chair with an expression of defiant boredom. Both brothers had been in and out of the juvenile justice system since their early teens, graduating from petty theft to increasingly violent crimes. Harold Blackwood made one final attempt to derail the proceedings. "Your Honor, I must object again to the presence of this animal in the courtroom. My clients are being prejudiced by the implication that they are somehow dangerous or threatening, requiring the protection of a police dog." "Mr. Blackwood," Judge Williams replied with barely concealed impatience, "I've already ruled on this matter. The dog is here in a therapeutic capacity, not as protection. Your objection is noted and overruled." The bailiff's voice cut through the tension. "All rise for the jury." The 12 jurors filed in, their eyes immediately drawn to Zeus. The dog remained perfectly still, a living statue of calm professionalism. Several jurors exchanged glances, clearly wondering how this unusual situation would unfold. "Be seated," Judge Williams instructed. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you'll notice that we have a therapy dog present in the courtroom today. This animal is here solely to provide emotional support to a witness who has experienced significant trauma. I instruct you to focus on the testimony and evidence presented, not on the presence of the dog." Rebecca Martinez stood to deliver her opening statement, but before she could speak, the courtroom doors opened one final time. The entire gallery turned as one to watch Carmen Rodriguez enter, carrying her 3-year-old daughter Emma. The little girl was dressed in a simple white dress with small pink flowers, her dark curls held back with a matching pink headband. She clutched her beloved stuffed bunny Coco with one hand, while her other arm wrapped tightly around her mother's neck. Emma's eyes were wide with confusion and fear as she took in the overwhelming scene, the crowd of strangers, the formal setting, the imposing judge's bench towering above. But then Emma's gaze found Zeus. The massive German shepherd was sitting at perfect attention, his amber eyes meeting hers across the courtroom. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the traumatized child and the therapy dog simply looked at each other, two souls recognizing something familiar in the other. Zeus's tail gave the slightest wag, barely perceptible, but unmistakable to those who knew him well. It was his signal that he'd found someone who needed his help. Emma Rodriguez was about to find her voice, and Zeus was ready to help her use it. Carmen Rodriguez had carried Emma to the witness section, where a special child-sized chair had been positioned next to the traditional witness stand. Dr. Jennifer Walsh sat nearby, ready to provide guidance if Emma became overwhelmed. The court. Stenographer's fingers hovered motionless over her machine, waiting for the first words to transcribe. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Emma remained pressed against her mother's shoulder, her face buried in Carmen's neck. The overwhelming sensory assault of the courtroom, the sea of unfamiliar faces, the formal black robes, the imposing height of the judge's bench, had caused her to retreat even deeper into her protective shell. Her small body trembled slightly, and Carmen whispered gentle reassurances in Spanish, the same lullaby words she'd used when Emma was a baby. Mia, está bien. Mama está aquí. To do va estar bien. Baby, it's okay. Mama is here. Everything is going to be okay. But Emma wasn't okay. 3 weeks of trauma counseling, family support, and medical intervention hadn't been enough to reach the little girl trapped inside her own mind. Rebecca Martinez felt her carefully constructed case beginning to crumble as she watched the key witness retreat into silence once again. Judge Williams leaned forward slightly, her usually stern expression softening as she observed the frightened child. Mrs. Rodriguez, would you like to take a few minutes? We're in no hurry here. Carmen nodded gratefully, but even as she rocked Emma gently, the little girl showed no signs of engagement. Her dark eyes remained tightly closed, her grip on Coco, the bunny so tight that her knuckles had turned white. Harold Blackwood smirked at the defense table, already composing his motion to dismiss. If Emma couldn't provide testimony, his clients would walk free on reduced charges by the end of the week. He'd seen traumatized witnesses before, and this child was clearly too damaged to provide reliable testimony, even if she could be coaxed to speak. That's when Zeus made his decision. Officer Michael Kane felt it rather than saw it, a subtle shift in his partner's energy. Zeus had been sitting at perfect attention for 20 minutes, professionally motionless as his training dictated, but now something fundamental changed in the dog's demeanor. His ears shifted forward slightly, his head tilted almost imperceptibly, and his amber eyes focused with laser intensity on the small figure clinging to her mother. Zeus, Michael whispered, barely audible. It wasn't a command, just an acknowledgement that his partner was about to do something unprecedented. Zeus rose slowly, his movements deliberate and careful. He didn't bound or rush. That would have been too overwhelming for a traumatized child. Instead, he moved with the patience of someone who understood that trust was earned through gentle consistency, not dramatic gestures. The courtroom collectively gasped as the massive German shepherd stepped away from Officer Kane's side. Several jury members leaned forward, unsure what was happening. Judge Williams raised her hand slightly, ready to call for order, but something in Zeus's calm purposefulness made her pause. Officer Kane, she whispered, is this part of the protocol? Michael shook his head slightly. No, Your Honor, but Zeus has never been wrong about what someone needs. Zeus approached the witness area with the quiet dignity of a diplomat approaching a peace negotiation. Each step was measured, deliberate, designed to announce his presence without startling. When he was still 6 feet away from Emma and her mother, he stopped and sat down again, his massive frame settling into a perfect sphinx position. And then he waited. Carmen felt Emma's grip on her neck loosen slightly. After a moment, the little girl's head turned just enough for one dark eye to peek over her mother's shoulder. Zeus sat motionless, his amber gaze patient and kind, radiating the sort of calm, understanding that transcended species barriers. Emma's other eye appeared, and then, slowly, she lifted her head entirely. Mother and daughter locked eyes briefly. And Carmen saw something she hadn't seen in 3 weeks. A spark of curiosity replacing the constant fear. "Mia," Carmen whispered, "there's a very nice dog who wants to meet you." Emma's gaze shifted to Zeus, and something magical happened. The massive police dog, trained in drug detection and crowd control, somehow made himself smaller. He lowered his head slightly, his ears relaxed from their alert position, and his tail gave the faintest wag against the courtroom floor. It was the universal language of dogs who understand children, the ancient communication that says, "I'm big, but I'm safe. I'm strong, but I'm gentle. I'm here to help, not to hurt." Emma slipped down from her mother's lap. The movement was so sudden, so unexpected, that Carmen reached out instinctively to stop her. But Dr. Walsh placed a gentle hand on Carmen's arm, recognizing that something profound was happening. Emma's small feet touched the courtroom floor, and she stood there for a moment, still clutching Coco, but no longer hiding behind her mother. Her white dress with pink flowers seemed to glow in the formal courtroom lighting, making her appear even more fragile and precious. Zeus remained perfectly still, a living statue of patience and compassion. Emma took one small step forward, then another. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as the traumatized child, who hadn't spoken in 3 weeks, began walking toward a 90-pound German shepherd she'd never met before. When she was 3 feet away from Zeus, Emma stopped, her small head tilted to one side, studying the dog's face with the intense concentration that only children possess. Zeus met her gaze steadily, his expression conveying safety and understanding. And then Emma did something that made Rebecca Martinez's heart stop. She raised one tiny finger and pointed directly at Zeus. "You," she said, her voice crystal clear in the absolute silence of the courtroom. "You have the same nice eyes as the angel man who saved me." The words hit the courtroom like a physical force. Carmen gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. Rosa Rodriguez's rosary fell from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Several jury members sat forward so quickly that their chairs creaked audibly. But Emma wasn't finished. Now that the dam had broken, words poured out of her like water from a burst pipe. "The angel man told me to hide behind the big boxes when the scary monsters came with their loud boom-boom sticks." Her small voice grew stronger with each word, as if Zeus's presence was feeding her courage. "He fought the bad monsters even when they hurt him really, really bad. He told me my abuela would be okay, and that nice doggies like you would catch the monsters and put them in timeout forever." Harold Blackwood shot to his feet. "Your Honor, I object. This testimony is clearly, Mr. Blackwood." Judge Williams's voice cut through his protest like a sword. "Sit down and be quiet. The witness is testifying." Emma continued as if the interruption hadn't happened, her attention focused entirely on Zeus. "The angel man had nice eyes just like you, and he whispered that everything would be okay because brave dogs and good people would make the monsters go away. He said I should remember his face so I could tell the nice police about him later." Rebecca Martinez felt her knees go weak. What Emma was describing didn't match any of the police reports. There had been no mention of a 4th person in the store during the robbery. Had they missed a witness? A victim? Someone who had tried to help? Emma took another step closer to Zeus, close enough now to reach out and touch his massive head if she chose to. "Can you help find the angel man? He got hurt really bad trying to save me and Abuelo. I want to say thank you." The courtroom erupted in whispers and movement, but Emma seemed oblivious to everything except the gentle dog sitting patiently before her. Zeus, for his part, remained motionless except for his eyes, which never left Emma's face. Judge Williams banged her gavel once. Order. Officer Kane, is the dog trained to remain in position during testimony? Yes, Your Honor, Michael replied, his own voice thick with emotion. Zeus won't move unless Emma approaches him first. Then we'll continue. Judge Williams turned to Rebecca Martinez. Counselor, I believe your witness has something more to tell us. Rebecca approached slowly, her legal mind racing to process what Emma had just revealed. Emma, sweetie, can you tell us more about the angel man? What did he look like? Emma finally tore her gaze away from Zeus to look at Rebecca. The trust that the dog had somehow inspired seemed to extend to the prosecutor as well. He was tall and had dark hair and kind eyes like Zeus. He wore a white coat like the doctors who help Abuelo. When the monsters with the loud boom booms came in, he pushed me behind the counter and told me to stay hidden no matter what happened. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place in Rebecca's mind, but she knew she needed to be careful not to lead the witness. Emma, did you see what happened to the angel man? Emma nodded solemnly. The monsters hurt him really bad when he tried to protect us, but he kept fighting until ... Her small voice faltered for the first time. Zeus, as if sensing Emma's distress, shifted slightly, laying down in a more relaxed position that made him appear less imposing, but equally protective. Emma's courage returned, until they made him sleep like Abuelo. But before he went to sleep, he looked at me and smiled, and he said the nice police dogs would find the truth. Rebecca Martinez realized she was witnessing more than just a breakthrough. In Emma's testimony, she was discovering that their case was about. The courtroom had transformed into a symphony of controlled chaos. Whispers rippled through the gallery like wildfire as spectators tried to process what they'd just heard. Detective Maria Santos was already on her phone, frantically calling the precinct to request immediate review of all hospital admission records from the night of the robbery. Rebecca Martinez felt her carefully prepared case strategy crumbling and rebuilding itself in real time as Emma's words echoed in her mind. The angel man in the white coat. Emma, meanwhile, had moved even closer to Zeus, her small hand now resting gently on the German shepherd's massive head. The dog remained perfectly still, as if he understood that his role as anchor was far from over. His amber eyes tracked every movement in the courtroom, but his body language radiated calm protectiveness that seemed to create an invisible bubble of safety around the small girl. Judge Williams called for a brief recess to allow the prosecution team to process this unexpected development. As the jury filed out, their faces showing mixtures of confusion and fascination, Harold Blackwood approached the bench with barely contained fury. "Your Honor, this is exactly what I warned against," he hissed, keeping his voice low but unable to hide his anger. "This child is clearly fantasizing, creating fictional characters and impossible scenarios. The presence of that animal has obviously influenced her testimony, causing her to invent stories about mysterious saviors who don't exist in any police report." Rebecca Martinez stepped forward, her legal instincts sharp despite the shocking turn of events. "Your Honor, what Emma described is remarkably detailed and consistent. She provided specific physical descriptions, clothing details, and a sequence of events that shows clear memory retention. The fact that this information wasn't in our initial reports doesn't make it false. It makes it newly discovered evidence that needs to be investigated." "Counselor Martinez is correct," Judge Williams ruled, her years of experience helping her navigate this unprecedented situation. "The witness has provided testimony that appears to be given in good faith. The court will allow a reasonable period for the prosecution to investigate these new claims. Mr. Blackwood, Your clients aren't going anywhere. They'll remain in custody while we determine the full scope of what happened that night. During the recess, Emma remained close to Zeus, now sitting cross-legged on the floor beside him. Carmen Rodriguez knelt nearby, marveling at the transformation in her daughter. For the first time in 3 weeks, Emma appeared relaxed, even content. She was speaking quietly to Zeus, telling him about her stuffed bunny Coco and asking if he had any toy friends at home. Dr. Jennifer Walsh observed the interaction with professional fascination. "This is remarkable," she whispered to Officer Kane. "Emma has formed an instant attachment bond with Zeus. It's as if his presence has unlocked not just her voice, but her entire personality. She's displaying normal 3-year-old behavior for the first time since the trauma." Meanwhile, Detective Santos was working her phone with the intensity of someone whose entire worldview had just shifted. "I need every hospital admission from the night of September 15th, she was saying to the desk sergeant. "Male, approximately 30 to 40 years old, possible gunshot wounds, head trauma, any kind of violent injury. Check emergency rooms, urgent care centers, even private clinics." As she waited for information, Santos pulled out the case file and began reviewing every detail with fresh eyes. How had they missed someone? The initial response had been thorough. They'd canvassed the area, checked with all nearby hospitals, interviewed every potential witness. But Emma's description was too specific, too detailed to be imagination. "The white coat," she muttered to herself. "She said he wore a white coat like the doctors who help Abuelo." Santos's phone buzzed with a text from Officer Rodriguez at the Hospital Records Division. "Found something. Dr. James Mitchell, 34, admitted to Jackson Memorial at 11:47 p.m. on 9/15. Gunshot wound to shoulder, severe head trauma, partial amnesia. No memory of how he was injured. Told responding officers he couldn't remember anything after leaving work that evening." Santos felt her heart rate spike as she read the information. "Rebecca," she called across the courtroom hallway where the prosecutor was huddled with her team. "I think we found him." The revelation sent shockwaves through both legal teams. Dr. James Mitchell wasn't just any random person. He was a pediatric surgeon at Jackson Memorial Hospital, highly respected in the medical community, with no criminal record and an impeccable reputation. More importantly, his hospital shift had ended at 9:30 p.m. on September 15th, just 45 minutes before the robbery occurred at Martinez Family Market. "This changes everything," Rebecca realized as she stared at Dr. Mitchell's photograph. On the hospital website, he was tall, dark-haired, and had the kind, intelligent eyes that Emma had described. If Dr. Mitchell was in that store and tried to protect Emma and her grandfather, he's not just a witness. He's a victim. And he's a hero. Harold Blackwood was frantically making phone calls of his own, but for entirely different reasons. The discovery of a fourth person in the store, especially someone of Dr. Mitchell's standing in the community, could completely destroy his defense strategy. Worse, if this doctor could corroborate Emma's testimony about the sequence of events, it would provide adult confirmation of everything the 3-year-old had said. When court reconvened 30 minutes later, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Word of the discovery had somehow leaked to the media, and the hallways buzzed with reporters trying to get information about the mysterious doctor. Emma, still seated beside Zeus, seemed unaware of the commotion her words had caused. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Judge Williams announced as everyone settled back into their seats, "new information has come to light during our recess that may be relevant to this case. The prosecution will now continue with their examination of the witness." Rebecca approached Emma gently, knowing that everything depended on the next few minutes. "Emma, you've been very brave telling us about the Angel Man. Can you remember anything else about what happened that night?" Emma looked up at Zeus, as if seeking his approval to continue. The dog's calm presence seemed to give her strength. The angel man came into Abuelo's store right after I picked out my candy. He was buying coffee from the big silver machine near the door. What happened when the scary men came in? They yelled really loud and pointed their boom-boom sticks at me and Abuelo. The angel man didn't run away like other people would. Instead, he stepped in front of us and told the monsters to leave us alone. Emma's voice grew stronger as she continued, encouraged by Zeus's steady presence. The big monster with the tattoos on his face laughed and said mean words. But the angel man didn't get scared. He told me to hide behind the boxes and stay very quiet. And then he fought the monsters, even though they were bigger and had more boom-boom sticks. In the gallery, Jake Morrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Emma's description of the big monster with tattoos on his face matched him perfectly. He had a distinctive skull tattoo on his left cheek that was clearly visible in his mugshot. The angel man was very brave, Emma continued. But there were two monsters, and only one of him. They hurt him really bad, but he kept trying to protect us until... She paused, her small voice catching slightly. "It's okay, sweetheart," Rebecca encouraged gently. "Take your time." Emma reached out and stroked Zeus's fur, drawing comfort from the contact, until the monsters made him fall down and go to sleep like Abuelo. But before he closed his eyes, he looked at me and said something very important. The courtroom leaned forward collectively, hanging on every word. He said, "Remember my face, little angel. Tell the good people what happened here. The truth always wins in the end." The impact of Emma's words was immediate and devastating. In the defendant's gallery, Linda Morrison began crying softly, finally understanding that her sons weren't just petty thieves caught in unfortunate circumstances. They were violent criminals who had nearly killed a man trying to protect a child. Harold Blackwood's confident demeanor had completely evaporated. His expensive suit and silver hair couldn't hide the fact that his defense strategy had just collapsed. Emma's testimony wasn't just compelling. It was corroborated by the existence of Dr. Mitchell, whose injuries matched her account perfectly. But Emma wasn't finished. Looking directly at Zeus, as if the dog was the only one who truly understood, she added the words that would seal the Morrison brothers' fate forever. "The angel man is still sleeping in the hospital, isn't he? When he wakes up, he'll remember what the monsters did to us. And then everyone will know that me and Zeus are telling the truth." In that moment, everyone in courtroom 6B understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary. A traumatized 3-year-old girl, with the help of a gentle German shepherd, had not only found her voice, but had revealed a hero that the world had forgotten. Dr. James Mitchell was about to discover that his forgotten act of courage would change not just the outcome of a criminal trial, but the course of several lives forever. Jackson Memorial Hospital's neurological rehabilitation ward had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Dr. James Mitchell sat propped up in his hospital bed, his left shoulder still bandaged from the gunshot wound, his head wrapped in white gauze that covered the surgical site where doctors had relieved pressure from his traumatic brain injury. For 3 weeks, he had existed in a fog of partial memories and frustrated confusion, knowing that something terrible had happened, but unable to access the details that remained locked behind walls of trauma-induced amnesia. Detective Maria Santos sat in the chair beside his bed, a tablet containing Emma's complete testimony ready to play. Dr. Rebecca Walsh, the neurologist who had been treating Dr. Mitchell's brain injury, stood nearby with a clipboard full of cognitive assessment tools. Officer Michael Kane waited by the door, with Zeus, the German shepherd, having become an unofficial part of the investigation team after his breakthrough with Emma. "Dr. Mitchell," Detective Santos began gently, "I want you to know that what we're about to show you might be difficult to watch. The little girl you're going to see went through a terrible trauma, but her testimony may help restore your memories of that night. James Mitchell nodded slowly, his dark eyes showing the same kindness that Emma had described even through the haze of his injury. At 34, he had dedicated his life to saving children, specializing in pediatric cardiac surgery that gave young hearts a chance to beat strong and free. The irony that a child might now help heal his wounded mind wasn't lost on anyone in the room. "I keep having dreams," Dr. Mitchell said, his voice still slightly slurred from the brain injury. "A little girl with dark curls, crying, a store with bright lights, men in masks. But every time I try to remember more, it's like my mind hits a wall." Dr. Walsh checked her monitoring equipment. "That's normal with this type of amnesia, James. The trauma created protective barriers in your memory. Sometimes an external trigger can help those barriers come down safely." Detective Santos started the video on her tablet. Emma's voice filled the hospital room, clear and strong as she described the angel man who had saved her life. As the testimony played, Dr. Mitchell's expression began to change. His eyes widened, his breathing quickened, and his uninjured hand gripped the hospital bed's railing. "Stop," he whispered when Emma described the man in the white coat stepping between her and the gunman. "Stop the video. Are you remembering something?" Dr. Walsh asked, monitoring his vital signs closely. Dr. Mitchell closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were filled with tears. "I remember her. Oh God, I remember everything." The memories came flooding back like a dam bursting. Dr. Mitchell had stopped at Martinez Family Market after finishing a grueling 18-hour surgery on a 6-year-old boy with a congenital heart defect. He was exhausted, running on caffeine and adrenaline, when he noticed the adorable little girl helping her grandfather arrange magazines near the front of the store. "She reminded me of my niece," Dr. Mitchell said, his voice growing stronger. As the memories solidified, she was so careful with those magazines, trying to make them perfectly straight. Her grandfather was watching her with such love, such pride. It was this beautiful, ordinary moment of family love. He paused, his medical training helping him process the traumatic memories in clinical terms. "I was at the coffee machine when they burst in. 2 men, ski masks, weapons. The older man, Emma's grandfather, he immediately moved to protect her. But they were so violent, so aggressive. I knew they were going to hurt them." "Detective." Santos leaned forward. "What happened next?" "I couldn't just stand there and watch them terrorize a child and an elderly man. My medical training kicked in. First, do no harm, but also protect those who can't protect themselves. I stepped between them and the gunman, told the men to take whatever they wanted, but leave the civilians alone." Dr. Mitchell's eyes grew distant as he relived that terrifying night. "The bigger one, the one with the skull tattoo on his face," he laughed. "Sighed I was some kind of hero wannabe. But I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just trying to buy time, hoping someone would call the police, hoping I could de-escalate the situation." Zeus, sensing the emotional weight of the conversation, had quietly moved closer to Dr. Mitchell's bed. The doctor noticed the dog and managed a weak smile. "You must be Zeus. Emma talked about you in her testimony. She said you have kind eyes like mine." Officer Kane stepped forward. "Zeus has a way of knowing when people need comfort. He's been working with Emma since her testimony." "She spoke?" Dr. Mitchell's face lit up with joy. "She actually spoke? When I last saw her, she was so scared, so traumatized. I was afraid she might never recover from what she witnessed. With Zeus' help, she found her voice," Detective Santos explained. "Dr. Mitchell, can you tell us exactly what happened during the confrontation?" Dr. Mitchell's expression darkened. "I tried reasoning with them, but they were high on something. Drugs, adrenaline, a thrill of violence. When I refused to back down, the bigger one hit me with the butt of his gun. I went down hard, but I could still see Emma hiding behind the counter where I'd told her to stay. His voice grew angry, the protective instincts that had driven him to act that night still burning bright. They didn't need to hurt the old man. He was already giving them everything they wanted. But they beat him anyway, just because they could. That's when I tried to get back up, tried to stop them. And that's when they shot you? The smaller one, the brother, he panicked when I started moving again. He fired once, caught me in the shoulder. The impact spun me around, and I hit the corner of a shelf. That's the last clear memory I have, until I woke up here 3 days later. Dr. Walsh made notes on her clipboard. The head trauma caused retrograde amnesia, your brain's way of protecting you from memories, too painful to process immediately. But hearing Emma's voice, seeing how she survived and recovered, that's given your mind permission to remember. There's something else, Dr. Mitchell said, his voice growing urgent. Just before I lost consciousness, I saw Emma's face. She was peeking around the counter, watching everything. I was afraid she'd be traumatized forever by what she'd seen. So I tried to smile at her, tried to let her know that good people would come, that she'd be safe. Detective Santos felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Emma said you told her to remember your face, that the truth always wins in the end. I did say that. Even though I was bleeding, even though I thought I might die, I wanted her to know that what those men did was wrong, and that someday, justice would come. I wanted her to believe in good people, in heroes, even if I couldn't be the hero she needed in that moment. Dr. Mitchell, Officer Kane said quietly, you were exactly the hero she needed. Because of your actions, Emma survived. Because of your courage, she found the strength to testify. And because of your sacrifice, those men are going to prison for the rest of their lives. Tears flowed freely down Dr. Mitchell's face. Is she okay? Emma? Is she really okay? She's more than okay. Detective Santos smiled. She's extraordinary. Would you like to see her again? Dr. Mitchell nodded, unable to speak. We've arranged for Emma and her family to visit this afternoon. She's been asking about you every day since the trial, wanting to make sure her angel man was getting better. I'm no angel, Dr. Mitchell protested. I'm just a doctor who couldn't stand by and watch evil triumph. Zeus approached the bed and gently placed his massive head on the mattress beside Dr. Mitchell's uninjured hand. The doctor stroked the dog's fur, marveling at the gentle strength radiating from the animal. Emma was right, he said softly. You do have kind eyes. Thank you for helping her find her voice. Thank you for giving her the courage to tell the truth. As if understanding every word, Zeus's tail wagged once, a gentle acknowledgement between two souls who had devoted their lives to healing others. 3 hours later, the hospital room door opened quietly. Carmen Rodriguez entered first, followed by Rosa with her ever-present rosary, and finally Roberto, carrying Emma. The little girl was dressed in a bright yellow dress that made her look like a ray of sunshine, and she clutched Coco the bunny in one arm while reaching toward Dr. Mitchell with the other. Angel man, Emma cried, her voice filled with pure joy. You're awake. Zeus said you would wake up and remember everything. Dr. Mitchell's heart nearly burst as Emma wiggled out of her father's arms and approached his bed. Hello, little warrior, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I've been waiting to thank you. Thank me? Emma looked confused. You're the one who saved me and Abuelo. And you're the one who saved me right back, Dr. Mitchell replied. By being brave enough to tell the truth, by remembering what happened, you gave my life meaning again. You showed me that what I did mattered. Emma climbed onto the chair beside his bed, careful not to disturb his bandages. Abuelo is all better now, too. He wants to meet you when you get out of the hospital. He says you're part of our family now, because family protects family. As Zeus settled on the floor beside them, Dr. Mitchell realized that sometimes the most profound healing doesn't come from medicine or surgery, but from the courage of a 3-year-old girl who refused to let evil win. The angel had found his wings again, and they were stronger than ever. 6 months later, the Miami-Dade County Courthouse stood as a monument to justice served. The same courtroom where Emma Rodriguez had first found her voice now hosted a very different kind of gathering. Instead of the tense atmosphere of a criminal trial, today's ceremony buzzed with celebration and hope. Judge Patricia Williams, resplendent in her formal robes, stood behind the bench addressing a packed gallery. Ladies and gentlemen, in my 35 years on the bench, I have witnessed countless cases, but none has touched my heart or restored my faith in humanity, quite like this one. Today, we gather not just to celebrate justice, but to honor the extraordinary courage of ordinary people who chose to do what was right in the face of evil. The Morrison brothers had been sentenced to 25 years each without possibility of parole. The jury had deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges: armed robbery, aggravated assault, attempted murder, and child endangerment. Harold Blackwood's expensive defense strategy had crumbled completely once. Dr. Mitchell's memory returned and corroborated every detail of Emma's testimony. In the front row of the gallery, Emma Rodriguez sat between her grandfather Miguel and Dr. James Mitchell, her small hands clasped in theirs. Miguel had made a full recovery from his injuries, though he walked with a slight limp that he claimed made him look distinguished like a movie star. His market had reopened with enhanced security and a small memorial plaque honoring the heroes who protect our community. Dr. Mitchell had returned to his position as Chief of Pediatric Cardiac Surgery at Jackson Memorial Hospital, but he'd also started a foundation providing trauma counseling for child victims of violent crime. The Emma's Voice Foundation had already helped dozens of children find their way back from the darkness of trauma, many with the assistance of therapy animals trained specifically for court testimony. The first order of business today, Judge Williams continued, is to recognize an extraordinary partnership that has revolutionized how our justice system approaches child witnesses. Officer Michael Caine and his partner Zeus have pioneered a new model for victim assistance that is being adopted by courts across the nation. Officer Caine, wearing his dress uniform, stood at attention as Zeus sat perfectly beside him. The German Shepherd wore a special ceremonial collar adorned with a Medal of Honor from the Miami-Dade Police Department. At nearly 6 years old, Zeus had become something of a celebrity in law enforcement circles, featured in training videos and psychology journals as an example of how therapy animals could unlock testimony from traumatized witnesses. Zeus, Judge Williams addressed the dog directly, causing ripples of laughter through the gallery. While you cannot understand the legal significance of these proceedings, please know that your gentle wisdom and patient courage have helped bring justice to those who had no voice. You are hereby designated as the first official court therapy animal in the state of Florida. Zeus's tail wagged once, his signature acknowledgement that he understood something important was happening, even if the specific details were beyond his canine comprehension. Emma giggled and clapped her hands. Zeus is famous now, but he was always famous to me because he helped me be brave. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, now serving as the court's Director of Victim Psychology Services, approached the microphone. Emma's case has fundamentally changed how we understand childhood trauma and recovery. Her ability to provide detailed, accurate testimony after forming a therapeutic bond with Zeus has led to the development of new protocols that are being implemented in family courts, criminal courts, and child protection services nationwide. The ripple effects of Emma's breakthrough had extended far beyond Miami. Law schools now taught courses on animal-assisted testimony. Police departments across the country were training therapy dogs specifically for courtroom work. Child psychologists were incorporating Dr. Walsh's Emma protocol into their treatment plans for young trauma survivors. But perhaps most importantly, Dr. Walsh continued, Emma has shown us that healing isn't just about recovering from trauma. It's about finding the strength to help others heal as well. As if on cue, Emma stood up in her seat. At 3 and a half years old, she had grown into a confident, articulate child whose bright smile had returned in full force. She wore a white dress with red hearts that her grandmother Rosa had sewn specially for today's ceremony. "Excuse me, Judge Lady," Emma said in her clear, sweet voice, causing another wave of laughter through the courtroom. "Can I say something important?" Judge Williams smiled warmly. "Of course, Miss Rodriguez." The court recognizes Emma Rodriguez. Emma took a deep breath, a habit she developed when she wanted to say something particularly meaningful. "I want to tell everyone that being scared is okay, but staying scared forever isn't good. When bad things happen, there are always good people who want to help. Sometimes they're people like Dr. Mitchell, who fight monsters even when they're scared too. Sometimes they're nice police dogs like Zeus, who sit with you when you're afraid. And sometimes they're judges and lawyers and doctors who work really hard to make sure the truth wins." She paused, looking around the courtroom with the confidence of someone much older than her years. "My abuelo always says that every person has a choice between being good or being bad. The Morrison brothers chose to be bad, but that doesn't mean bad always wins. Dr. Mitchell chose to be good, and Zeus chose to be good, and all of you chose to be good too. That's why I'm not scared anymore." The courtroom erupted in applause, but Emma wasn't finished. "I want to help other kids who are scared like I was. Dr. Mitchell said I can come to his foundation and help train therapy dogs. Zeus said he wants to teach other police dogs how to help scared children. And Judge Lady, maybe sometimes when kids need to tell the truth about bad things, I can sit with them, and Zeus can sit with them too, so they know they're not alone." Judge Williams had to wipe tears from her eyes before she could respond. "Miss Rodriguez, I think that's the most eloquent victim impact statement I've ever heard. And yes, I believe we can arrange for you and Zeus to help other children when they need to be brave." Carmen Rodriguez stood and hugged her daughter, marveling at the transformation from the silent, traumatized child who had emerged from that terrible night 6 months ago. "Mia, you're going to change the world." "I already did, Mommy," Emma replied with the matter-of-fact wisdom that only children possess. "I helped Zeus catch the monsters, and Dr. Mitchell remembered how to be a hero again. And now lots of kids won't have to be scared alone." As the ceremony concluded, Zeus approached Emma for their traditional goodbye ritual. The little girl wrapped her arms around the massive dog's neck and whispered something in his ear that only he could hear. Zeus's tail wagged enthusiastically, and he gently licked her cheek. Officer Kane knelt beside them. "What did you tell him, Emma?" "I told him thank you for showing me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. And I told him that heroes come in all sizes. Some have 4 legs and some have 2 legs, but they all have big hearts." Dr. Mitchell approached the trio, his own eyes misty with emotion. "Emma, you know what I learned from you?" "What?" "I learned that sometimes the people we think we're saving end up saving us instead. You saved me that night, not the other way around. You saved me by remembering, by speaking up, by showing everyone that truth and courage are stronger than fear and evil." Emma considered this with the seriousness she applied to all important matters. "I think we saved each other. That's what families do." As the crowd began to disperse, Emma, Dr. Mitchell, Zeus, and Officer Kane stood together in the courtroom, where their unlikely partnership had begun. They had come together as strangers bound by tragedy, but they were leaving as a family bound by love, courage, and an unshakable belief in the power of truth. The last image captured by the news cameras that day was of Emma sitting on the courthouse steps, Zeus's massive head resting in her lap, while Dr. Mitchell and Officer Kane sat on either side of them. It was a photograph that would appear in ink. Psychology textbooks, law enforcement training manuals, and inspirational posters for years to come. But more than that, it was proof that sometimes, when darkness threatens to overwhelm the light, the most unlikely heroes emerge to remind us that goodness, courage, and love will always triumph in the end. Emma Rodriguez had found her voice, and in doing so, she had given voice to countless other children who needed to know that they were not alone, that justice was possible, and the heroes, both human and canine, would always stand guard against the monsters in the dark. The truth had won, just as the angel man had promised it would. And Emma Rodriguez, with her faithful companion Zeus by her side, was ready to help it win again and again, one scared child at a time.